to people of other nations. If they had to be taken by warfare, the virgin women and the children were saved. 20. 10-15 All spoil in the form of goods or other items had to be cleansed. If of fabric, skin, or wood, it was to be washed. If metal, it was to be processed with fire. New 31. 20-23 Apostate cities. Israelite cities that turned apostate were to be completely annihilated with all their inhabitants. The spoil was to be burned in the public square, and the city was to be left a heap of ruins to time indefinite. 13. 12-17 Christ despoils Satan's house. When on earth, Jesus Christ despoiled or plundered the house of Satan by delivering those held in bondage to the demons, curing the afflictions the demons had brought upon them. Mount 12. 22-29 Also, when he ascended on high he carried away captives. He gave gifts in men. These he took away from Satan's control as gifts for the building up of his congregation. F4. 8, 11, 12 False religious spoilers. Christ declared the scribes and Pharisees to be, like robbers, full of plunder, evidently acquired by extortion from widows and other defenseless persons. And also because they kept the people in religious bondage by taking away the key of knowledge. Mount 23. 25. Lu 11. 52 The religious leaders of the Jews were likewise prominent in causing the plundering of the possessions of Christians. Heb 10. 34. Sponge. The absorbent, tough, elastic skeleton of certain aquatic animals found in abundance in the waters of the eastern Mediterranean Sea and elsewhere. Sponges were probably obtained in the past as today by divers who removed them by hand from underwater rocks. After the living animal died and decayed within its skeleton, the sponge was washed thoroughly until only the skeleton remained. The sponge's ability to absorb and release liquids made it commercially important in ancient times. While Jesus Christ was on the torture stake he was offered some sour wine contained in a sponge that was at the end of a reed. Mount 27. 48. Mr. 15. 36. Joe 19. 29. Spring. Sea fountain, spring. Sprout. Sea branch, sprout. Starkish station she's head of grain. One in the Christian congregation at Rome in about 56 CE, whom Paul speaks of as my beloved, and to whom he sends his greetings. Row 16. 9. Stacked. Stacked drops Heb. Na middle.af were one of the ingredients of the incense limited to sacred use. X30. 34 The related verb form means drip. JG 5. For the Greek Septuagint rendered this word station middle.kte, meaning oil of myrrh, from the Greek verb stationzo, drip. Thus the Hebrew and Greek terms indicate that it was a balsam that drips from resinous trees. The Latin Vulgate rendered the word stacked. The specific tree yielding stacked is uncertain. Among the sources that have been suggested are Oriental sweet gum tree liquid Umber orientalis and the mastic Pistacia bush Pistacia lentiscus. Staff. Secremender's staff. Rod, staff. Stagheb. I middle.lil. An adult male deer. The red deer Cervus elaphus, the fallow deer Dama mesopotamica, and the roe deer Capreolus capreolus are three varieties of deer that were once native to Palestine. Being a chewer of the cud and a splitter of the hoof, the stag, according to the law, was acceptable for food if, as in the case of other creatures, its blood was poured out upon the ground. 12. 15, 16, 22, 23. 14. 4-6. 15. 22, 23 The flesh of the stag was included among the meats provided for King Solomon's table. 1 Kai 4. 22, 23. Other scriptural references to the stag are illustrative. The Shulamite compared her shepherd lover to a young stag and made allusion to the swiftness of this animal. K2. 9, 17. 8. 14 The stag's ability to climb steep places with ease is used to illustrate the complete cure of lame persons. Issa 35. 6. Compare Heb 12. 12, 13. O textoi acute miritra longo. Star 1032. The estimate that there are 100 billion galaxies throughout universal space. About 10,000-000,000 of these are within the range of modern telescopes. The vastness of the stellar creation adds infinite force and meaning to the Creator's statement at Isaiah 40. 26. Raise your eyes high up and see. Who has created these things? It is the one who is bringing forth the army of them even by number, all of whom he calls even by name. Due to the abundance of dynamic energy, he also being vigorous in power, not one of them is missing. Compare PS 147. 4. The reverend psalmist was led to say, when I see your heavens, the works of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have prepared, what is mortal man that you keep him in mind, and the son of earthling man that you take care of him. PS 8. 3, 4. Age. The fact that rays from remote stars and galaxies millions of light years distant now reach giant telescopes on Earth indicates that the creation of these astral bodies occurred millions of years in the past, since otherwise these rays would not yet have reached our planet. Such creation is evidently included in the initial statement at Genesis 1. 1. In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Verse 16 does not contradict this in saying that during the fourth creative day, or period, God proceeded to make the stars. The word make heb. A middle dot so does not mean the same as the word create heb. Be a middle dot ra. See creation. Number of stars. In addressing man, God used the stars to denote a countless number, comparable to the grains of sand on the seashore. GE 22. 17. 15. 5. X 32. 13. Compare NE 9. 23. Na 3. 15, 16. Heb 11. 12. Since the stars clearly discernible to the unaided eye number only a few thousand, this comparison was viewed by many in the past as out of balance. Yet today the evidence shows that the number of stars does indeed compare to all the grains of sand in all the earth. It is of interest to note that, while Moses spoke of Israel as having seen a certain fulfillment of this Abrahamic promise, the censuses taken of the population, as recorded in the Bible, never did include the total number in the nation. 1. 10. 10. 22. 28. 62. David is mentioned later as specifically refraining from taking the number of those from 20 years of age and under, because Jehovah had promised to make Israel as many as the stars of the heavens. 1 Ch 27. 23. Such concept of the innumerableness of these heavenly bodies distinguishes the Bible writings as unique when compared with contemporary views of ancient peoples. Orderly arrangement. Additionally, the orderliness of the arrangement of these celestial bodies is emphasized in various texts, references being made to statutes, regulations, and orbits courses, rs. J 31. 35-37. JG 5. 20. Compare Jude 13. The tremendous forces that determine the relative positions of certain stars according to physical laws are indicated by God's questions to Job. Can you tie fast the bonds of the Chimera constellation, or can you loosen the very cords of the Kazil constellation? Can you bring forth the Mazzaroth constellation in its appointed time? And as for the Ash constellation alongside its sons, can you conduct them? Have you come to know the statutes of the heavens, or could you put its authority in the earth? Job 38. 31-33. See Ash constellation. Kazil constellation. Chimera constellation. Mazzaroth constellation. Thus, the New Bible Dictionary states, we assert, then, that the Bible consistently assumes a universe which is fully rational, and vast in size, in contrast to the typical contemporary worldview, in which the universe was not rational, and no larger than could actually be proved by the unaided senses. Edited by J. Douglas, 1985, p. 1144. The Apostle Paul's expression concerning the difference between individual stars can be appreciated even more in the light of modern astronomy, O textoi acute miritra longo, star 1033 in Babylon, but was proved worthless at the time of her destruction. Isla 47. 12-15. Star seen after Jesus' birth. The astrologers from eastern parts, hence from the neighborhood of Babylon, whose visit to King Herod after the birth of Jesus resulted in the slaughter of all the male infants in Bethlehem, were obviously not servants or worshippers of the true God. Mount 2. 1-18. See astrologers. As to the star GR, a middle dots were seen by them. Many suggestions have been given as to its having been a comet, a meteor, a supernova, or, more popularly, a conjunction of planets. None of such bodies could logically have come to a stop above where the young child was, thereby identifying the one house in the village of Bethlehem where the child was found. It is also notable that only these pagan astrologers saw the star. Their condemned practice of astrology and the adverse results of their visit, placing in danger the life of the future Messiah, certainly allow for, and even make advisable, the consideration of their having been directed by a source adverse to God's purposes as relating to the promised Messiah. It is certainly reasonable to ask if the one who keeps transforming himself into an angel of light, whose operation is with every powerful work and lying signs and portents, who was able to make a serpent appear to speak, and who was referred to by Jesus as a manslayer when he began, could not also cause astrologers to see a star-like object that guided them first, not to Bethlehem, but to Jerusalem, where resided mortal enemy of the promised Messiah. 2:11. 3:14. 2th 9. GE3. 1-4. Jo 8. 44. Figurative use. Stars are used in the Bible in a figurative sense, and in metaphors or similes to represent persons, as in Joseph's dream in which his parents were represented by the sun and moon, and his 11 brothers by 11 stars. GE 37. 9, 10 Job 38. 7 parallels the morning stars that joyfully cried out at earth's founding with the angelic sons of God. The resurrected and exalted Jesus spoke of himself as the bright morning star and promised to give the morning star to his conquering followers, evidently indicating a sharing with him in his heavenly position and glory. Re 22. 16. 2. 26, 28. Compare 2T2. 12. Re 20. 6. The 7 angels of the congregations, to whom written messages are delivered, are symbolized by 7 stars in the right hand of Christ. Re 1. 16, 20. 2. 1. 3. 1. The angel of the abyss called Abaddon is also represented by a star. Re 9. 1, 11. See Abaddon. In the proverbial saying of Isaiah chapter 14, the boastful and ambitious king of Babylon, that is, the Babylonian dynasty of kings represented by Nebuchadnezzar, called the Shining One Heb. Hemidl.L. Lucifer, KJ, is presented as seeking to lift up his throne above the stars of God. Isla 14. 4, 12, 13. See Shining One. The metaphor of a star is used in referring prophetically to the Davidic kings of Judah. New 24. 17. And Bible history shows that the Babylonian dynasty for a time did rise above these Judean kings by conquest of Jerusalem. A similar prophecy in Daniel chapter 8 describes the small horn of some future power as trampling down certain stars of the army of the heavens and moving against the prince of the army in his sanctuary. 8. 9-13. While at Daniel chapter 12, by simile, those persons having insight and bringing others to righteousness are pictured as shining like the stars in the time of the end. 12. 3, 9, 10. By contrast, immoral deviators from truth are compared to stars with no set course. Jude 13. The darkening of the stars, along with the sun and moon, is a frequent figure used in prophetic warnings of disaster brought as a result of God's judgment. Isla 13. 10. S 32. 7. Re 6. 12, 13. 8. 12. Compare Job 9. 6, 7. The dimming of such luminaries is also used in the description of the fading years of the aged person at Ecclesiastes 12. O textui acute miritra longo. State a 1034 action of a miraculous nature taken on behalf of Israel's army. Stater. A silver coin with which the temple tax was paid for Jesus and his apostle Peter. Equivalent to 4 drachmas, it amounted to about 4 days' wages at that time. Mount 17. 24, 27 Many scholars view it as the tetradrachma minted at Antioch, Syria, or at Tyre. The Tyrian tetradrachma, approximately the size of the United States $50, bore the head of the god Melkart on the obverse side, an eagle perched on a ship's rudder on the reverse side, and an inscription reading Tyre the Holy and Invincible. A likeness of Emperor Augustus appeared on the tetradrachma of Antioch. Statute. A formally established and recorded rule, or law. Divine or human. GE 26. 5. PS 89. 30-32. Dar 6. 15 The Bible reveals Jehovah God to be the supreme statute giver. Issa 33. 22. See law. Lawgiver. Statute giver. See lawgiver. Stealing. See thief. Stephanas Stepha middle darkness from a root that means crown. Wreath. One of the mature members of the congregation at Corinth, the capital of the Roman province of Achaia in southern Greece. Paul personally baptized Stephanas' household as the first fruits of his ministry in that province. 1 Co 1. 16. 16. 15 Some 5 years later, about 55 CE Stephanas, together with 2 other brothers from Corinth, visited Paul in Ephesus, and it may have been through them that Paul learned of the distressing conditions about which he wrote in his first canonical letter to the Corinthians. 1 Co 1. 11. 5. 1. 11. 18 Also, it may have been by their hands that this letter was delivered to Corinth. 1 Co 16. 17. Stephen Stephen from a root meaning crown. Wreath. The first Christian martyr. Though his name is Greek, he was one of the faithful Jewish remnant that accepted and followed the Messiah. Acts 7. 2. His appointment to a special ministry. Stephen's name first appears in the Bible record in connection with the appointment of men to special service responsibilities in the Christian congregation at Jerusalem. The account reads, Now in these days, when the disciples were increasing, a murmuring arose on the part of the Greek-speaking Jews against the Hebrew-speaking Jews, because their widows were being overlooked in the daily distribution. The apostles saw the need for special attention to this matter, and they instructed the congregation. So, brothers, search out for yourselves 7 certified men from among you, full of spirit and wisdom, that we may appoint them over this necessary business. These qualified men were then selected and were appointed by the apostles. Acts 6. 1-6. Stephen therefore received an appointment to a ministry in a special way. He and the 6 others appointed over this necessary business, the distribution of food supplies, may have already been older men, or overseers. These men were men full of spirit and wisdom, which this particular emergency required, for it was not only the mechanical distribution of food supplies possibly in the form of grains and other staples, but also a matter of administration. The duties may have called for these men to handle buying, keeping of records, and so forth. So, although such work, if on a lesser scale or under other circumstances, might have been such as would be handled by a diametal a ministerial servant, not by an overseer, or older man, the situation here was a sensitive one, difficulty and differences already existing in the congregation. Therefore it required men of notable judgment, discretion, understanding, and experience. Stephen's defense before the Sanhedrin indicates his qualifications. While taking care of these appointed ministerial duties, Stephen vigorously continued his Christian preaching. The chronicler Luke reports that Stephen, full of graciousness and power, and performing great portents and signs among the people, was bitterly opposed by Jews of the so-called synagogue of the freedmen and o textoi acute miritra longo Stoics 1035 to death. Just before falling asleep in death, Stephen prayed, Jehovah, do not charge this sin against them. Certain reverent men came and gave him a burial and lamented his death. Great persecution then broke out against the Christians, scattering them though the apostles remained in Jerusalem and resulting in the spreading of the good news. Acts 6. 8. 8. 2. 11. 19. 22. 20. Stephen's account delivered before the Sanhedrin includes a number of facts concerning Jewish history that are not found in the Hebrew scriptures. Moses' Egyptian education, his age of 40 when he fled Egypt, the 40-year duration of his stay in Midian before returning to Egypt, and the role of angels in giving the Mosaic law. Acts 7. 22, 23, 30, 32, 38. Stephen was the first to bear witness that he had seen, in a special vision, Jesus returned to heaven and at the right hand of God, as prophesied at Psalm 110. 1. Acts 7. 55, 56. Steward. One placed in charge of the household or certain property belonging to another. The Hebrew word somidl.kin is rendered steward Isa 22. 15. Momidl.shul, which means one managing, likewise refers to a steward. GE 24. 2. FTN the Greek omidl.nomos steward can also be translated house manager. Lu 12. 42. FTN. A steward might be a freeman or a trusted slave. The unrighteous steward to whom Jesus referred in one of his illustrations seems to be pictured as a freeman. Lu 16. 1, 2, 4 kings, and many other persons of wealth or distinction, had a steward, and men varied as to the degree of authority they gave to their stewards. The Greek word imiddle.pytromidl.pos, man in charge, is closely related in meaning, since a steward often had oversight of the house as well as the other servants and the property, and at times over business affairs. If 1-3. Lu 16. 1-3. Abraham had a faithful servant, Eliezer of Damascus, as man in charge of his extensive belongings, which consisted of great wealth of livestock and, at one time, many slaves, although Abraham held no land possessions other than a burial plot. GE 13. 2. 14. 14. 15. 2. 23. 17-20. Acts 7. 4, 5 Joseph, as a slave in Egypt, came to be in charge of Potiphar's house. GE 39. 1-4, 8, 9 later, he too had a steward. GE 44. 4 King Elah of Israel had a man over his household in Tirzah. This was likely a custom also of the other ancient kings. 1 Kah 16. 9 Shebna was steward over the king's house in the days of King Hezekiah of Judah, but he was unfaithful and was replaced by Eliakim the son of Hilkiah. Isa 22. 15, 20, 21. In the Christian Greek scriptures we find that Herod Antipas had a man in charge of his house. This man's wife ministered from her belongings to Jesus. Lu 8. 3 Jesus, in an illustration, referred to a man in charge of the vineyard laborers who paid them at the end of the day. Mount 20. 8. The responsibilities and administrative duties of a steward suitably describe the ministry entrusted by Jehovah God to the Christian. In Jesus' prophecy concerning the last days, he describes the faithful and discreet slave, who also serves as a steward for him, a manager over the household of faith, to give spiritual food at the proper time. Mount 24. 45. Lu 12. 42-44 Overseers in the Christian congregation are stewards, and faithfulness is strictly required of them. Tit 1. 7. 1 Co 4. 1, 2 Paul, as an apostle, especially as the apostle to the Gentiles, had a special stewardship entrusted to him. 1 Co 9. 17. F3. 1, 2 Peter points out to all Christians, overseers and others, that they are stewards of God's undeserved kindness expressed in various ways, and he shows that each has a sphere, or a place, in God's arrangement in which he can carry out the faithful stewardship. 1 Pe 4. 10. Stocks. An ancient instrument of confinement and punishment, consisting of a wooden frame in which a seated victim's feet were locked. 2 Ch 16. 10. J 20. 2, 3. Often while he was exposed to public gaze and ridicule. Roman Stoxo textoi acute merita longo. Stomach 1036 Stoics held that matter and force, the latter sometimes being called providence, reason, or God, were the elemental principles in the universe. To the Stoics all things, even vices and virtues, were material. Not believing in God as a person, they thought that all things were part of an impersonal deity and that the human soul emanated from such source. Thinking the soul survived death of the body, some Stoics believed it would eventually be destroyed with the universe. Others, that ultimately it would be reabsorbed by this deity. The Stoics maintained that to attain the highest goal, happiness, man should use his reason to understand and conform to the laws governing the universe. To them, pursuing a life of virtue therefore meant following nature. The truly wise man, in their estimation, was indifferent to pain or pleasure, independent of riches or poverty and the like. Fate, they thought, governed human affairs, and if problems seemed overwhelming, suicide was considered unobjectionable. Zeno of Citium, Cyprus, after associating with the Cynics for a time, established this separate school of philosophy about 300 BCE. His disciples got the name Stoics from the Stoa Poikil, the painted porch in Athens where he taught. Stoic philosophy was further developed particularly by Cleanthes and Chrysippus and was widely accepted among the Greeks and Romans, its adherents including Seneca, Epictetus, and the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. It flourished until about 300 CE. Like the Epicureans, the Stoics did not believe in the resurrection as taught by Christians. So, when Paul declared the good news about Jesus and the resurrection, they called him a chatterer and said he seemed to be a publisher of foreign deities. Later, having been led to the Areopagus, Paul cited writings of the Stoics Aratus of Cilicia in his Phenomena and Cleanthes in Hint to Zeus, saying, "For by God we have life and move and exist, even as certain ones of the poets among you have said, for we are also his progeny." Acts 17. 17-19, 22, 28. Stomach. An enlarged part of the alimentary canal in humans and animals. In some animals the stomach includes 4 compartments. Under the law, a person who sacrificed a victim had to give the stomach heb. QE middle to the priest. 18. 3. In the Christian Greek scriptures, the Apostle Paul recommended that Timothy use a little wine for the sake of his stomach gr. Stomachos. 1-5. 23. In some instances where the Hebrew words translated belly and inward parts are used, they apparently include the stomach. PR 13. 25. John 1. 17. The same is true in the usage of belly in the Christian Greek scriptures, as, for example, at Romans 16. 18 and 1 Corinthians 6. 13. See belly. Stone. A material widely used in building. Its durable nature has been of great aid to archaeologists in gaining some knowledge of the past. Temples, palaces, monuments, and other structures of stone were erected by the Egyptians, Assyrians, and other nations. On many of these structures are pictorial representations and inscriptions relating events, describing victories, and depicting customs, which throw light on their history as well as on their everyday life. The Hebrews used stone widely in buildings. Le 14. 40, 41, walls NE 4. 3. PR 24. 31, altars X 20. 25, millstones JG 9. 53, water vessels Jo 2. 6, weights PR 16. 11, for covering wells, caves, and tombs GE 29. 8. Jo's 10. 18. Jo 11. 38, as well as for many other purposes. However, the Hebrews did not erect monuments with pictorial bas-reliefs, as did the pagan nations. Consequently, little is known about their appearance, the exact styles of their clothing, and so forth. But the Bible provides a richer history of Israel, their manner of life, and their personalities than do the stone remains of any of the other nations. Stone cutting was a highly developed craft. 2 Sir 5. 11. 1 Chi 5. 18. The stones of textoi acute meritra longo, storehouse 1037 pebble here translates the Greek word piasithan. The Apostle Paul uses the word when he recounts his former persecution of Christians, saying, "I cast my vote PS Ethan." Literally, voting pebble against them. Act 26. 10 pebbles were used in courts of justice in rendering judgment or voicing an opinion of either innocence or guilt. White pebbles were used for pronouncing innocence, acquittal. Black ones for pronouncing guilt, condemnation. The white pebble given to the conqueror therefore appears to mean Jesus' judgment of him as innocent, pure, clean, passing Christ's approval as a disciple. See jewels and precious stones. Rock mass. Stone cutter. A hewer of stone. One who cuts, carves, or dresses stones to be used for building purposes. 2 Chi 12. 11, 12. 2 Ch 24. 12 King David made alien residents in Israel stone hewers to hew squared stones, cutting them to the proper size for the prospective temple of Jehovah. 1 Ch 22. 2, 15. Compare 1 Chi 6. 7. See quarry. Stone pavement. A paved place at Jerusalem, where Roman governor Pontius Pilate sat on the judgment seat when Jesus Christ was before him for trial. Joe 19. 13. The site was called, in Hebrew, Gabbatha, a word of uncertain derivation and possibly meaning hill, height, or open space. The Greek name for it, though Stroton stone pavement, may indicate a tessellated pavement, one of ornamental mosaic work. The stone pavement where Jesus appeared before Pilate was in some way associated with the governor's palace. Joe 19. 1-13. It may have been an open area in front of the palace of Herod the Great. Some scholars favor identification with a site near or a central court within the Tower of Antonia, NW of the temple grounds. But the exact site of the stone pavement remains unknown. See Antonia, Tower of Governor's Palace. Stoning. Under the law, a wrongdoer deserving capital punishment usually was pelted to death with stones. The 20. 2. This was to clear out what was bad from their midst. All Israel would hear of the punishment, and fear of such wrongdoing would be instilled in their hearts. The 13. 5, 10, 11. 22. 22-24. In stoning an evildoer, they showed that they were zealous for true worship, anxious to see that no reproach came upon God's name, and desirous of maintaining a clean congregation. Before a wrongdoer could be stoned, at least 2 witnesses had to give harmonious testimony against him, and thereafter they cast the first stones. 24. 14. 17. 6, 7. The prospect of being the executioner made a person think searchingly in giving evidence, and doubtless was a deterrent to false testimony, which, if discovered, would cost the lying witness his own life. 19. 18-20. Stoning no doubt usually took place outside the city. New 15. 35, 36. 1 Chi 21. 13. Contrasted at 22. 21. Thereafter, as a warning, the corpse might be impaled on a stake, but not beyond sunset. It was buried that same day. The 21. 21-23. Jesus spoke of Jerusalem as the killer of the prophets and stoner of those sent forth to her. Mount 23. 37. Compare Heb 11. 37. Christ himself was threatened with stoning. Joe 8. 59. 10. 31-39. 11. 8. Stephen was killed in this manner. Acts 7. 58-60. At Lystra, fanatical Jews stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city, imagining he was dead. Act 14. 19. Compare to Co 11. 25. For offences carrying the penalty of stoning, see Crime and Punishment. Storage cities. Cities especially designed as government storage centres. Reserves of provisions such as grain, as well as other things, were preserved in warehouses and granaries built at these locations. Under Egyptian oppression, the Israelites were compelled to build cities as storage places for Pharaoh, namely, Pithom and Ramses. X1. 11 storage cities were also built by Solomon. 1 Chi 9. 17-19. 2 Ch 8. 4-6 Later, as King Jehoshaphat prospered, he went on building fortified places and storage cities in Judah. 2 Ch 17. O Textoi Acute Muritra Longo, Stork 1038 facilities were common in ancient times. 1 Ch 27. 25. 2 Ch 32. 27, 28. Jo 1. 17. Hag 2. 19, and certain cities served principally as storage centers. X1. 11. Storehouses were needed in conjunction with the sanctuary to take care of the tithes and contributions from the fields, orchards, and vineyards given by Israel to the Levites. Mal 3. 10 certain Levites were put in charge of the stores, and they distributed such provisions to their brothers. 1 Ch 26. 15, 17. Ne 12. 44. 13. 12, 13. In ancient Egypt, granaries varied in structure, one type resembling the present-day silo. It had a door at the top for depositing grain by ascending a ladder and small sliding doors at ground level for its removal. Underground granaries have also long been used in the Middle East, these evidently being preferred in sparsely populated areas, because they are concealed from marauders. Illustrative use. Jesus Christ, in urging his disciples not to be anxious about material needs, but to seek only their bread for this day, reminded them that God feeds the birds, though they do not gather things into storehouses or barns. Mount 6. 11, 25, 26. Lu 12. 22, 24. To show that life does not result from the things one possesses, Jesus gave an illustration of a rich man who considered replacing his storehouses with bigger ones to hold his many goods, only to face death. His material riches therefore were of no benefit to him. Lu 12. 13-21. Instead of encouraging us to look to earthly goods and accordingly build up a great store of them, the wise writer of Proverbs says, "Honor Jehovah with your valuable things. Then your stores of supply will be filled with plenty." PR 3. 9, 10. It was exemplified in the experience of the nation of Israel, which, when obediently serving Jehovah and bringing full tithes to the sanctuary, was blessed with abundance. De 28. 1, 8. 1 Chi 4. 20. 2 Ch 31. 4-10. Mal 3. 10. Apparently King David referred to such material blessings for obedience at Psalm 144. 13-15. After rescuing David and his people and giving them victory over their enemies, Jehovah's blessing would include filling their storehouses with produce and giving them material prosperity. Showing that Jehovah was the true source of their prosperity and happiness, David concludes this psalm with the words, "Happy is the people whose God is Jehovah." Figurative use. John the Baptizer warned the Pharisees and Sadducees of their dangerous situation, likening truly repentant ones to wheat to be gathered, but comparing those leaders to chaff. He said to them, "The one coming after me will gather his wheat into the storehouse, but the chaff he will burn up with fire that cannot be put out." Mount 3. 7-12. Lu 3. 16, 17. Jesus foretold a harvest, which he equated with the conclusion of a system of things, and in which angelic reapers would gather symbolic weeds to be burned, whereas the wheat would be gathered into God's storehouse, the restored Christian congregation, where they would have God's favor and protection. Mount 13. 24-30, 36-43. Jehovah speaks of things around which he has put boundaries by means of created forces, or natural laws, as well as of things he has reserved under his control for special purposes, as being in storehouses. The sea is said to be gathered like a dam, put in storehouses. PS 33. 7. Also of other natural phenomena that he has at times used against his enemies, he asked Job, "Have you entered into the storehouses of the snow, or do you see even the storehouses of the hail, which I have kept back for the time of distress, for the day of fight and war?" Job 38. 22, 23. Compare JOS 10. 8-11. JG 5. 20, 21. PS 105. 32. 135. 7. Even the armies of the Medes and Persians under King Cyrus were included by Jehovah among the weapons of his denunciation brought out of his storehouse against Babylon. J 50. 25, 26. Storkheb. Chasey middle dot da. The name of this bird o textoi acute miritra longo, street 1039 know their appointed times. J 8. 7. The stork regularly migrates through Palestine and Syria from its winter quarters in Africa, appearing in large flocks during March and April. Of the two kinds of storks found in Israel, the white stork and the black stork Ciconia nigra, the former only occasionally remains to breed in that region, usually making its nest in trees, but also on man-made structures. The black stork, so named for its black head, neck, and back, is more common in the Hula and Bet-Shean valleys, and it seeks trees, where available, to build its nest. The psalmist referred to the storks nesting in the tall juniper trees. PS 104. 17. Contrasting the flightless ostrich with the high-flying stork, Jehovah asked Job, "Has the wing of the female ostrich flapped joyously, or has she the pinions of a stork and the plumage?" Job 39. 13. The stork's pinions are of great breadth and power, the secondary and tertiary feathers being almost as long as the primaries, giving an immense surface to the wing and enabling the stork to be a bird of lofty and long-continued flight. A stork in flight soaring on its powerful wings, with its neck extended and its long legs stretched out straight behind it, makes an imposing sight. The two women seen in Zechariah's vision Zech 5. 6-11 carrying an ephah measure containing the woman called wickedness are described as having wings like the wings of the stork. The reference to the wind in their wings verses 9 harmonizes also with the rushing sound produced by the air passing through the stork's pinions. The primary feathers are fingered out in flight so that slots are formed at the ends of the wings, thereby controlling the airflow over the top of the wings and improving their lifting power. Straight. A street in Damascus, Syria. Act 9. 10, 11. Picture, Volume 2, p. 748. During the Roman period, it was a major thoroughfare running from east to west through the city for approximately 1.5 kilometers 1 mi. The center lane for vehicular traffic was about 15 meters, 50 feet wide, with colonnaded walkways on either side for pedestrians, creating a grand avenue about 26 meters, 85 feet in width. Still bearing an Arabic equivalent of the former name Darb al-Mustaqim, but no longer completely straight, it runs W from the city's east gate. On this ancient street, at the house of a man named Judas, Saul of Tarsus stayed for a time after the glorified Jesus Christ appeared to him. In a vision, Jesus directed the disciple Ananias to this home on the street called Straight to restore Saul's sight. Act 9. 3-12, 17-19. Stranger. See alien resident. Straw. The dried stalks of grains such as wheat and barley. In the Bible, particularly the fragments remaining after the completion of the threshing operation. Anciently straw, either by itself or mixed with other provender, was used as fodder for domestic animals. GE 24. 25, 32. JG 19. 19. 1 Chi 4. 28. Issa 11. 7. 65. 25. Straw was also employed in the manufacture of bricks. X5. 7-18. See brick. It appears in illustrative settings with reference to the destruction of the wicked Job 21. 18 and the subjugation and humiliation of Moab. Issa 25. 10-12 Mighty Leviathan is depicted as a counting iron like mere straw. Job 41. 1, 27. Street. A public way in a city or town. The common Hebrew term for street chutz basically means outside. Issa 42. 2. FTN in ancient towns and cities of Bible lands it appears that most streets were unpaved. PS 18. 42. Issa 10. 6. Bar 2. 21. However, Channels for water drainage from the streets have been discovered in Jericho and Jezza. Generally, streets were narrow and winding, but there were also broad ways. Lu 14:21. Compare 21:21. Nineveh's streets were wide enough to accommodate chariots. Nah 2. For Babylon and Damascus had broad avenues or processional ways, and some